Since ancient times, humanity has longed to possess extraordinary powers, and in the 20th century, a mysterious meteorite crashed into the South Pole. Scientists extracted a substance from the meteorite capable of granting limitless enhancement to human strength and hidden potential. People call this substance the Dragon Pulse, and by mutual agreement, the research was secretly handed over to government control. According to classified data, activating it unlocks the body's potential, granting a person immeasurable power. Excessive power awakens evil within people, turning them into deranged killing machines and bringing horrifying destruction upon the world. Unfortunately, the substance vanished overnight, triggering a conflict between the Security Bureau and the criminal underworld. The guy scrolls through the news on his smartphone, frozen in confusion as he tries to process what the hell this Dragon Pulse even is. Staring at his phone screen, the young man says in shock that this whole story sounds straight out of a manhwa. The guy stares at the screen and yells in excitement after receiving an insanely awesome mission directly from boss Lu himself. Xiangyang confirms that he's ready to take the job, and the stern boss Lu promises to send him the exact address later. His dreams of heroic achievements are interrupted by a sudden incoming call, because mom always calls at the worst possible moment. Xiangyang answers the phone, only for his mother to drop the bombshell that he absolutely has to go on a blind date today. Digging for treasure in his nose, the clueless fool tries to dodge the date by claiming he's extremely busy with work. The gloomy young man trudges along the station platform, while his mother's strict voice on the phone leaves him absolutely no room to refuse. The young man nervously makes excuses over the phone, unsuccessfully trying to convince his mother that he has important work to do here. Crushed under overwhelming mental pressure from his mother's relentless nagging over the phone, the red-haired youth is forced to agree to the date. The guy reluctantly confirms the name of the hotel, eager to end this exhausting conversation with his mother as quickly as possible. The young man's gaze locks onto a stranger's hand, slowly creeping dangerously close to the thighs of a defenseless female passenger in the train car. The furious beauty clenches her fists in frustration over the countless perverts shamelessly harassing her on the subway. A mystical glow envelops the stalker's hand as he secretly drains life energy directly from the unsuspecting passenger's body. The villain anticipates his triumph after discovering a rare Dragon Pulse parasite that he intends to absorb as an offering to his master. A sinister grin twists across the stranger's face as he imagines the generous praise he'll receive from his master for successfully carrying out the dirty deed. The strong hand of the red-haired young man suddenly grabs the criminal's wrist, stopping the magical theft right in the middle of the process. With a powerful strike, the fiery-haired youth sends his opponent flying, knocking both the breath and the hat right out of him. The passengers watch in astonishment as the unlucky thief crashes onto the floor of the train car after receiving a crushing counterattack. The righteous defender sternly declares that animals like this deserve nothing less than a brutal beating, while the rescued girl timidly clings to his shoulder. Blushing with embarrassment, the charming stranger sincerely thanks her savior for his bravery. Awkwardly scratching the back of his head, the fiery-haired good guy breaks into a pleased smile as he accepts her gratitude while trying to appear modest. The villain roughly shoves the redhead toward the girl, attempting to use the chaos to escape the scene of the crime. Losing his balance from the shove, the savior crashes into the passenger, and the two tumble onto the train floor in an incredibly awkward position. Finding himself in a compromising situation, the fighter lets out a muffled groan of embarrassment, his face buried in his companion's deep cleavage. Failing to understand the situation, the enraged girl slaps her savior across the face, mistaking him for a shameless pervert. The offended beauty storms away, throwing out biting remarks about mistaking a pervert for a gentleman, while the poor guy can only rub his burning cheek in confusion. Sniffling resentfully, the falsely accused hero grumbles about how difficult it is to do good deeds these days. 2 hours later, the young man arrives at the luxurious hotel where his blind date is supposed to take place, quickly informing his mother over the phone. The puzzled guy peers deeper into the room, clearly unable to find what he had imagined, and wonders if someone is messing with him. Stunned by what he sees, the young man horrifiedly wonders how his mother could send him on a date with such a terrifyingly muscular woman with such an unusual appearance. The shocked guy seriously fears that his family went broke and decided to sell him off to a wealthy bride, but internally declares that there's no way he could ever agree to such a marriage. The sudden vibration of the phone in his jeans pocket makes the hero flinch, interrupting his panicked thoughts about the disastrous blind date. Pulling out his phone, he sees a message from Boss Lou containing an address, prompting him to double-check his plans for the evening once again. Gathering his courage, he politely but firmly tells the beauty that they are not right for each other, and using an urgent work assignment as an excuse, hurriedly tries to escape the bizarre date. Before leaving, he acts like a gentleman and leaves money on the table, saying the meal is on him and thanking the lady for the meeting before making his hasty exit. Suddenly, as if out of nowhere, a stream of water crashes down onto the guy, catching him completely off guard at the worst possible moment. Soaked from head to toe and utterly stunned, the young man freezes with a stone-cold expression while droplets slowly run down his cheeks. Annoyedly wiping his face, the guy boils with rage and loudly demands to know which idiot dared to splash him. The furious girl from the subway turns out to be the very person he was supposed to meet, and she is outraged by his attempt to buy his way out, considering such behavior on a blind date completely unacceptable. The girl suddenly cuts herself off and begins staring closely at the stranger's face, gradually realizing that he is the same scumbag from the train. The stunned young man freezes in place after realizing that his random acquaintance from the subway is actually the very girl he was supposed to meet. The young couple emotionally shout each other's nicknames, finally realizing that this ridiculous meeting was arranged by their parents. Lu Xinran angrily refuses to date a guy like him and immediately orders her friend Xiao Zeng to leave the place. The cafe visitors curiously watch the unfolding scene and whisper among themselves about the conflict between the two young people in the middle of the hall. The guy suddenly realizes his mistake and asks the girls who are leaving to wait, trying to fix the misunderstanding caused by his own carelessness. Still slightly confused, the young man decides to confirm the girl's name in order to make absolutely sure that she is Lu Xinran. The girl defiantly confirms her identity and declares that she absolutely hates people who think too highly of themselves just because they have money. Completely desperate, the red-haired fool throws his hands up and awkwardly explains that there was no way he could have guessed the identity of his real date. The guy points at his phone screen and clumsily insists that he ditch that strange woman only because a profitable job opportunity suddenly came up. The girl bites her finger thoughtfully and begins seriously doubting whether she was actually right, since this red-haired weirdo really does have a job. The young people suddenly fall silent and simultaneously turn toward the hallway, after noticing someone's figure out of the corner of their eyes. At full speed, a purple-haired stranger rushes straight toward the stunned guy and joyfully shouts that she finally found him. The red-haired fool falls into a daze from the sudden hug and tries to figure out who this clingy girl even is. The stranger flirtatiously reminds the guy of his past heroic deeds when he supposedly used her services, and genuinely wonders if this red-haired scatterbrain already forgot everything. Breaking out in a cold sweat, the poor guy realizes that his secret underground heroics have surfaced at the absolute worst moment. The red-haired guy desperately tries to explain himself to Miss Lu, while the stranger practically hangs all over him, completely turning the date into a disaster. Furious, Lu Xinran doesn't wait for his ridiculous explanations and delivers a powerful slap to the redhead that practically makes sparks fly from his eyes. The poor guy clutches his burning cheek with a look of complete misery, realizing that the date is officially ruined. Ignoring his empty words, the beauty declares that no excuses can help him now, because his immoral behavior speaks louder than anything he could possibly say. Lu Xinran plans to leave for Tianhai immediately after parting ways with Xiao Zeng, while the panicked red-haired fool desperately tries to stop her. The purple-haired flirt playfully winks at a mysterious figure on the balcony, signaling that her mission has been successfully completed. The hooded guy reports through his radio to his buddy that the blind date has been successfully sabotaged and that Lu Xinran is returning to Tianhai exactly as planned. Left completely alone, the red-haired young man gloomily wanders down the night street, clicking his tongue in frustration as he realizes how ridiculously fast his evening fell apart. The guy pushes the failed date out of his mind and shifts his focus to carrying out a dangerous mission in a deserted location where a human life is at stake. The redhead is completely bewildered because he expected to see some shady hideout or dangerous facility, but instead finds himself standing in front of an ordinary school. The guy double-checks the address with his mentor and receives instructions to infiltrate Tianhai High School in order to protect the principal. Suddenly, the hero freezes after hearing a piercing scream echoing from deep inside the building. A blonde thug wearing a gold chain threatens to break the legs of a beaten security guard and a tied-up girl in a torn uniform, while his accomplices watch the abuse unfold. The stereotypical street punk imagines himself to be some irresistible seducer and shamelessly grabs the crying girl by the chin. The arrogant, messy-haired punk shamelessly leans in for a kiss, turning the whole situation into an absurd farce. Unexpectedly, instead of a sweet kiss, a brutal boot crashes straight into the smug guy's face with full force. The unlucky playboy is sent flying into a deep knockout, leaving his accomplices frozen in shock. The red-haired young man admits that he underestimated how intense this school really is, while the terrified thugs slowly back away in fear. The entire gang of pathetic kidnappers is dramatically sprawled across the floor, while their leader is hilariously stuck inside a trash can, pitifully whimpering. The hero frees the captives, who urgently beg him to check the principal's house because of some suspicious individuals nearby. The burly young man realizes that protecting the school principal is a crucial part of his secret mission. Two suspicious hooded figures hurry to finish their dirty work before someone catches up to them from above. Completely unaware of the danger, the principal calmly takes a shower while softly humming a tune to herself. Suddenly, the principal hears a suspicious noise that immediately puts her on edge right in the middle of her shower. Wrapped in a towel, the worried woman cautiously opens the door to the empty hallway, trying to figure out where the noise came from. Behind the unsuspecting woman in the towel, a sinister, masked intruder suddenly appears out of nowhere. The alarmed young man suddenly hears the desperate scream of the principal echoing from deep inside the house. The hooded accomplices hurriedly stuff the principal into a sack while one of them already searches for the quickest escape route through the window. A loud slam makes the kidnappers flinch and nervously exchange glances, realizing that their stealthy escape plan has just gone completely wrong. With a thunderous crash, the red-haired hero kicks the door open and bursts into the room at the exact moment the villains least expected it. The hero can only cry out helplessly as he watches the criminal carrying the sack leap out the window. The red-haired young man desperately shouts after the kidnappers, realizing that they are getting away. Without hesitation, the young man jumps out the window after the criminals in order to save the principal. A detective in a hat drags a handcuffed blonde man down the dark street, forcing him to move faster. The kidnappers suddenly land right in front of the restrained blonde, making him tremble in horror and let out a wild scream. The stunned blonde with a bruised face stares wide-eyed at the fleeing criminals carrying the sack. The hero lands dramatically on the ground mid-jump, shocking and terrifying everyone present with his sudden appearance. Filled with determination, the brave young man charges after the criminals, demanding that they release the principal immediately. The shocked blonde screams with his mouth wide open that this is a battle between gods, while his partner nervously peeks from behind his shoulder. The red-haired master is stunned by the enemy's audacity after seeing them jump from the 8th floor without the slightest fear. The brazen kidnappers, carrying a massive sack, energetically leap over a wrought iron fence, hoping to disappear into the moonlit night. In a spectacular flip, the acrobatic fighter delivers a powerful kick straight into the villain, ruthlessly interrupting the thieves' escape. The force of the kick sends the sack slipping from the unlucky kidnapper's hands and flying freely through the air. The red-haired daredevil glides through the air, with his arms stretched toward the precious sack, determined to save the falling principal before she hits the ground. The quick-witted fighter grabs onto the massive sack with a death grip, convinced that it is finally in safe hands. Realizing the situation has gone south and their prize is slipping away, the incompetent kidnappers decide it's time to run for it and order a tactical retreat over the fence. The bewildered pink-haired beauty, wearing nothing but a towel, lets out an embarrassed scream while covering herself as the unexpected guest stares at her with wide eyes. The girl in the towel sternly demands to know why the muscular man came here, while he awkwardly tries to explain himself. With blood running from his nose, the embarrassed young man is shocked to realize that this is the very girl he was assigned to protect. The furious pink-haired girl charges at her opponent with a scream, accusing him of stalking her right after being rejected. The guy indignantly reminds her that he saved her life, but the girl merely sneers and calls him a pervert in response. The bold Chen Mengchen arrives dramatically from the darkness alongside her guards, ordering everyone to be silent. The pair simultaneously shift their surprised gazes toward the officer, freezing in silent anticipation of what will happen next. Commander Chen Mengchen arrives with her guards and immediately begins professionally questioning the group about the reason for the urgent call. The policewoman raises her hand and admits that she was the one who made the call, drawing the young man's attention. The officer points at the tied-up criminals, accusing them of attacking and attempting to kidnap the principal. Chen Mengchen firmly points toward the targets and orders her people to immediately capture all the offenders. The restrained blonde desperately tries to justify himself to the guards, loudly proclaiming his innocence. The boy tearfully begs the commander for mercy, claiming that they were forced to commit the crime. A beaten, handcuffed guy points to a strange watch in horror, while complaining about the insidious actions of his attackers. A man displays a device attached to his wrist, threatening to explode if he refuses to commit a crime. The boy asks the victim about the identities of the kidnappers, but he only briefly denies any knowledge of them. The girl, dressed in a revealing outfit, looks down thoughtfully at the guy, thinking about the mysterious kidnappers and the watch. Commander Chen Mengchen's expression suddenly changed as she realized something frightening, while her eyes showed growing anxiety. The girl confidently declares that installing an explosive mechanism in a wristwatch is the signature of the Qingma sect, shocking the guy with her assumption. The red-haired guy is completely confused, asking in bewilderment about the Qingma sect, which is unknown to him. The young lady then seriously explains that the Qingma sect is a dangerous branch of the demonic order and expresses concern about their sudden return. The fighter ponders intently, trying to understand the sectarians' motives and the reason for their attack on Lu Xinran. Chen Mengchen looks closely at the witness, asking if there are any other clues that could help in the investigation. The beaten blonde man with a ridiculous expression on his face initially denies it, but then intrigues the girl by mentioning one suspicious detail. The blonde-cuffed man suddenly switches into Sherlock mode and declares that normal people don't jump from the 8th floor for exercise or hand out punches like kung fu masters. Demanding an explanation, the commander in the leather vest turns a suspicious glance at the red-haired guy, asking who he is and why he is hanging around the school in the middle of the night. Our red-haired hero is noticeably nervous, feverishly trying to figure out how not to reveal his affiliation with the League of Free Warriors and what excuse to come up with for the strict officer. He awkwardly blames it all on years of training, while the gears in his head are spinning wildly, trying to come up with a plausible reason for his nighttime walk. The main character, who is also a strategist, decides to go all in and comes up with a crazy theory that the director is his girlfriend, with whom he fell in love at first sight this morning, which leaves his chosen one completely stupefied. The indignant lady tries to set the dreamer's jaw, and at the same time, his brain, persistently denying any hint of suddenly flared-up feelings. The striking lady with the choker is clearly intrigued by the unexpected turn of events, noting to herself that the daughter of such a high-ranking official has a very specific taste in gentlemen. The adventurer is stunned by the news of his new girlfriend's high-ranking father, realizing that his legend of love at first sight has just become extremely dangerous. The cunning lady decides to finally corner the liar and takes out her phone to personally clarify the details of this love story with the chairman himself. The red-haired master of improvisation breaks out in a cold sweat, realizing that his bluff has reached a dead end and that the most inconvenient phone call is about to follow. The striking brunette finally gets through to the chairman and calls out Xiang Yang's name, while Xiang Yang and his fake girlfriend are frozen in anticipation of the verdict. The shocked lady almost drops her phone when the chairman personally confirms that Xiang Yang is indeed dating his daughter, Lu Xinran. The redhead and his companion experience a total system failure and a collective jaw drop when the brazen bluff magically materializes into reality. The girl, wearing only a towel, completely loses her composure and screams into the phone that her father is talking complete nonsense because Xiang Yang is a nobody to her and has no name. The voice from the receiver sternly calls on Xinran to stop her tantrums, completely depriving her of any chance of justifying herself before the relative who suddenly appeared. An enraged Xinran flies into berserk mode and tries one last time to reach her parents' logic, while the reality around her finally turns into a farce. Mengchen receives direct orders to deliver Xiang Yang to the chairman, and the red-haired improviser realizes that his merry adventure is smoothly turning into an official visit to his father-in-law with unpredictable consequences. The red-haired storyteller peers into the abyss of impending problems with growing anxiety, sincerely not understanding why such an important person needed a personal audience with the author of such a dubious lie. Mengchen, with an ironic grin, escorts his son-in-law under guard, urging him on with caustic comments as he trudges dejectedly toward his fate. Xiangyang stares, mesmerized at the panoramic view from the elevator, realizing that the higher he rises above Tianhai, the deeper he burrows into the abyss of elite showdowns. Mencken announces his imminent arrival at the general staff, while the red-haired suicide bomber nervously digests the scale of the upcoming interrogation with the boss of all the military. The tactician is genuinely perplexed as to why they are burying the general staff underground, completely unaware that this is the ideal place so that no one will hear its cries for help. Mencken gives a quick safety briefing, explaining that when your order is in a state of perpetual war with demons, burying the general staff deeper isn't paranoia, but the only way to drink coffee in peace. The officer leads Zhang Yang to the door of the chairman's office and sends him off to meet his fate, while the boy resignedly agrees to this one-way visit. Zhang Yang crosses the threshold of the office with the air of entering not the chairman's office, but a hungry tiger's cage, cursing his passion for improvisation. The chairman immediately lays his trump cards on the table, confessing to the young man that it was he who arranged their accidental meeting with his daughter, turning the entire situation into a multi-move game of an experienced puppeteer. Redhead catches a system failure because the bluff worked too well. It was not because of his good looks that Lu Guanlin chose Xiang Yang as his daughter's personal bodyguard, but because of his superior combat skills, which set him apart from all the country's free warriors. The chairman cuts to the chase, asking about the dragon's pulse with a serious look that would have made anyone else lose their sense of humor. Lu Guanlin hands Xiang Yang a stack of papers, offering to personally examine the secret data on the dragon pulse and fully immerse himself in the essence of the matter. When the realization dawns that he's been drawn into a game of national significance, the redhead is completely speechless, because now the dragon's pulse is not just a legend, but a new source of headache. The boy studies the historical background of the dragon pulse, amazed that the ancient ancestors could think of nothing better than turning a meteorite that fell from the sky into spices to increase its characteristics. Xiang Yang tries to connect the ancient artifacts with family dramas, and the chairman just throws up his hands, admitting that even his strategic genius didn't foresee how his daughter would get involved in this story with the meteorites. A month ago, scientists in secret laboratories successfully extracted the dragon pulse, rejoicing that they now had a powerful weapon against the demonic order, while the chairman carefully recorded this success in a dossier. Elin is assigned as the first test subject in this scientific adventure, as she prepares to take on the full force of the newly mined dragon pulse with a disarming volunteer smile. The experiment immediately goes wrong, and the girl turns into a furious berserker with blazing eyes, clearly demonstrating that the side effects of the dragon pulse are far more terrible than any benefits. The chairman gloomily states the fact that the miracle doping turned out to be defective, and together with its power, it completely burns out morale, turning any volunteer into an uncontrollable killing machine. With a frightening realization, scientists notice that Elin's state is exactly the same as the insane trance that the fanatics of the demonic order fall into. The chairman shocks Xiang Yang with the truth that he himself orchestrated his meeting with his daughter, as it turns out that the dragon pulse gave birth to the demonic order, and it is impossible to destroy it. And in order to protect the artifact from the villains, Lu Guanlin divided it into two parts and hid them inside himself and Shinran. By laying his cards on the table, Lu Guanlin confronts Xiang Yang with the fact that he must now pretend to be Shinran's boyfriend in order to guard the other half of the artifact around the clock under the guise of romance. Xiang Yang takes the challenge seriously, saluting the chairman, making it clear that the boy's role has been accepted, and he is now officially on round-the-clock duty to guard Shinran in the secret of the dragon pulse. Xiang Yang stood frozen in deep thought at Shinran's house, realizing that the only way to protect the settlement would be to land him in the middle of a major scandal. Xiang Yang decides to cast aside his doubts and, guided by the motto "Come what may," decisively rings the doorbell, officially launching the operation to introduce the obstinate Jinran into his life. In anticipation of the unknown future, the boy mockingly waits for the door to open. Taken aback by the surprise, the headmistress, dressed in her house clothes, opens the door and finds Xiang Yang standing on the threshold, whose late visit with dubious news clearly ruins all her plans for the evening. Instead of greeting him, Shinran squeezed the poor man's nose so hard that blood spurted out, turning everything around him crimson. The pink-haired girl, wearing only a nightgown, is clearly not thrilled with the uninvited guest and is ready to incinerate him with her gaze. Xiang Yang, wiping away the blood, blurts out the absurd news that her father has officially approved of them living together in the same apartment. The indignant owner of the apartment slams the door shut, flatly refusing to accept such crazy living conditions. Desperately trying to hold back the onslaught, Jinran throws his whole body against the door as the guest continues to make stupid jokes. Amusingly imagining the guest in the role of a stern dominant with a whip, Shinran is momentarily speechless from such impudence. Instantly flaring up with indignation, Xiangyang brings her to the state of a boiling kettle with his stupid proposals. Having given the impudent man a powerful slap, the angry girl in her nightgown clearly demonstrated her attitude towards his dirty hints. Rubbing his burning cheek, Xiangyang sadly realized that such beatings were already becoming a habitual way of life for him. The courier, who suddenly appeared, politely interrupted their heated argument, offering to pick up the package and finish the brawl later. Accepting the pink package from the delivery man, the girl instantly changes her anger to mercy and politely thanks him for his work. Looking puzzledly at the courier's spotless shoes, Xiangyang suddenly realizes something is wrong while he politely wishes the girl bon appetit. Unable to bear it any longer, driven to the brink, Shinran screams in rage, demanding that the insolent bodyguard get out. With a loud bang, putting an end to the argument, the heavy door slammed right in front of the guy's nose, leaving him completely alone in the corridor. With his jaw comically jutting out in resentment, Zhang Yang grumbles after the departing girl, reminding her of his high status and the chairman's trust. Vigorously waving his arms in the middle of the empty corridor, the guy continues to argue with the closed door, proving to an invisible opponent his lack of enthusiasm for his new job. Hidden in the thick shadows around the corner, a mysterious figure in a hat watches intently, without making a single sound. Leaving the pink bag on the glass table, a tired Shinran sank limply onto the sofa under the light of a luxurious chandelier. Waving her fork in annoyance, the petite Shinran continues to rant at Xiangyang's overconfidence, which she believes relies too much on his good looks. While devouring her dinner with gusto, the girl mentally criticizes her father's choice, sincerely not understanding what talents he managed to discern in this intolerable man. Shinran's vision suddenly becomes cloudy, and the outline of the dessert on the table begins to blur as she feels a strange and sudden dizziness. Losing consciousness, the girl at the last moment manages to realize that there was clearly some kind of impurity in the delicious dessert. With difficulty holding on to her slipping consciousness, the headmistress, in fear, notices how the door to her room slowly opens, and an ominous, dark figure appears on the threshold. An uninvited guest in a tracksuit freezes in the doorway, politely greeting the sleeping hostess with his sly smile. Gathering her last strength, she tries to find out the identity and intentions of the visitor before consciousness completely leaves her. The villain, knife in hand, mockingly answers a question with a question, enjoying the helplessness of his victim. The madman's face twists into a hideous grin as he openly declares his desire to kill her for the promised reward. Clutching a sharp blade in his hand, the attacker slowly advances toward the defenseless girl, whose strength has completely run out. Having lost control of her body, she watches what is happening in complete bewilderment through a foggy veil in her eyes. The muscles finally turn into cotton wool, and the legs can no longer support the body's weight under the influence of a strong sleeping pill. At the most critical moment, the bitter realization comes that driving away the unbearable handsome man was a very rash idea. With a furious cry, the killer rushes forward, delivering a decisive blow with his knife to end this protracted matter. She closes her eyes in horror and screams in hope of a miracle, until the instinct of self-preservation tells her to cover her head with her hands. The savior's dramatic appearance through the window ends with a crushing knee strike to the jaw of the stunned villain. A powerful kick sends the unlucky killer flying to the side, crashing into the floor and losing all will to fight. With a radiant smile, the savior steps onto the defeated enemy in a masterly manner, greeting his mistress, who is speechless from shock. Having recovered from the blow, the would-be killer tries to get up from the floor and, in complete confusion, mumbles that he saw with his own eyes how this guy left in a rage. Xiangyang lectures his defeated enemy with undisguised superiority, ridiculing him for his poor disguise and overly clean shoes, which immediately revealed him as an amateur and not a real courier. The savior's gaze becomes icy and piercing as he launches into a harsh interrogation, demanding that the name of the person who ordered this assassination be immediately revealed. The mighty hero shakes confessions out of the fake courier, while he tries in vain to preserve the remnants of his dignity. The poor fellow in the cap is shaking so violently that his excuses about a chance visit sound like a very bad theatrical production. The trembling chin and darting eyes make this courier look more like the victim of a panic attack than a dangerous criminal. The pensive giant is suddenly distracted from his execution, noticing the suspicious glint of a hidden camera in the ventilation. The red-haired wardrobe's fierce grimace hints that someone is about to get into serious trouble because of the extra witnesses. A stylish, bespectacled hacker seethes with anger when he realizes his secret plan has been ruined by a single camera. An enraged villain, in a fit of rage, brings his fist down on the equipment, turning an expensive laptop into a pile of useless junk. The head of the sect furiously curses his incompetent assistants, who are unable to cope with even one simple goal. A flirtatious young woman tries to calm down her angry boss by calling the psychopath her handsome and gentle prince. A smile blossomed on the satisfied villain's face, because only this beauty was capable of appreciating his subtle and vulnerable nature. With a sharp shout, the boss calls the two blockheads over, interrupting his tenderness for another round of angry instructions. An enraged cult leader yells at his men because one guy ruined all his evil plans to capture the girl. The grief-stricken subordinates bowed so deeply that any moment now, they would begin to bang their foreheads on the floor, begging for mercy from their master. On their knees, the two swear allegiance and promise to improve, though their guilty smiles suggest that the next failure is just around the corner. The boss's sinister grin bodes ill, causing his underlings to sweat and tremble in fear in anticipation of the inevitable reprisal. The boss decides to show generosity and gives his subordinates one last chance, accompanied by such a face that it would be better if they just quit into the sunset. The boss's pointing finger clearly shows the poor fellows their unenviable future in the form of a pile of scrap metal, causing their souls to finally sink into their heels. Sheng Wang hits the killer's jaw with such force that all of the latter's insidious plans fly out of his head, along with a couple of teeth. Mounting the fallen attacker, the enraged defender begins interrogating him, demanding the immediate name of the boss and everyone involved in this visit. Covering his face with his hands, the hapless raider instantly loses all his arrogance and pitifully begs for mercy, ready to lay everything out in its entirety. Holding his breath in fear, the prisoner watches as his own watch begins to beep alarmingly and fill with an ominous scarlet light, turning into a ticking trap. Torn apart by horror and cursing everything under the sun, the courier jumps up and rushes around the room while his watch continues to emit an insistent and frightening beep. Stunned by the attacker's behavior, the girl asks her defender in bewilderment whether he had knocked out the last of the poor guy's brains with such a powerful blow. Suddenly realizing the seriousness of the situation, the guy's expression changes, realizing that the ticking on the courier's hand does not portend anything but big trouble. Instantly reacting to the threat, the guy grabs the girl in his arms and screams about the urgent need to run away, accompanied by an increasingly frequent squeak. Barely managing to push off, the couple literally flies out of the epicenter of the fireball, while behind them, everything that remains of the room shatters into pieces with a roar. Once at a safe distance from the fire, the worried hero first checks on his companion, while the dust from the powerful explosion is still settling around them. Looking at the chalk outlines on the floor, the boys, together with the police, examine the crime scene where the hapless criminal had recently been. Carelessly joking off the accusations of an acquaintance in a police uniform, the red-haired guy puts all the blame on Shinran, jokingly calling her a real magnet for all sorts of troubles. Outraged by such insolence, the girl in the leather jacket sharply reprimands the guy, reminding him of Shinran's high status and the inadmissibility of such jokes directed at the chairman's daughter. Gently interrupting her friend's angry tirade, the girl stands up for her savior, admitting that he was there again at the right moment and helped her out of trouble. Making sly teasing noises at the embarrassed girl, the red-haired man pats her head in a proprietary manner, declaring that the shock from the explosion had clearly done her mental good. Standing at attention, the officer who arrived at the scene, wearing a hat, salutes the girl, recognizing her as his superior in rank. Holding out his hand, the officer shows evidence found at the scene of the crime, namely a mysterious token with a hieroglyph, which was found on the attacker. Upon seeing the discovered evidence, Meng Qin froze in silent shock, clearly recognizing the symbol and realizing that the matter was taking a much more sinister turn than it initially seemed. The stern beauty strikes a most pathetic pose, realizing the secret organization's involvement in this stupid incident. A formidable lady in leather politely asks the muscle man to step aside for a minute, while his companion simply stands beautifully nearby. For their secret negotiations, the couple chose the rooftop, where they could calmly discuss the insidious cult in the fresh air. The feisty girl pinned the big guy against the wall, trying to beat the truth out of him about his connections with the sectarians and the chairman. The red-haired giant is silently outraged by the ridiculous accusations, considering himself an exemplary and extremely useful guy for society. The funny muscle man swears he has never heard of any cult before being slammed into a wall. A bold hand blocks the guy's path with a loud slap, causing him to make a face in surprise. The girl began to furiously interrogate the poor fellow, not believing in such convenient coincidences involving a sect. The poor guy is mentally discussing an important secret, although from the outside it seems that he is simply comically suspended under the pressure of the lady's hands. The red-haired impudent fellow suddenly declares himself a secret agent from Beijing, causing the girl to widen her eyes comically at such a story. The policewoman finds this latest round of bullshit quite convincing, and a logical puzzle begins to form in her head. Continuing to weave intrigues, this cunning man describes in full detail his role as a secret bodyguard, which the ward herself does not even suspect. Thoughtfully raising her finger to her lips, the naive girl begins to be imbued with the heroic legend that this suspicious guy has composed. To ensure the safety of the protected facility, a feisty young woman persuades a guy to go undercover at the school so that he can act from the inside, like a pro from the Secret Services. Completely confused, the red-haired agent asks how he can pull off such a trick, since he clearly didn't expect his invention to go so far. Seeing Zhang Danteng calling him his new job, the red-haired guy was stunned, his eyes widening in horror. Instead of the promised stadium, the red-haired giant is handed a cramped boiler room where the only sports equipment is a set of massive valves. Before he can count on any indulgences, this guy will have to work hard, as the head teacher vividly informs him of, putting an end to any hopes for a sweet life. Irritatedly watching Zhang Danteng's retreating figure, the poor red-haired fellow mentally marked him as an extremely unpleasant character. Bitterly proclaiming his power over the girl, he pours out all the accumulated poison in his thoughts, calling his young rival a worthless youth. The boy hears a desperate cry for help, causing him to instantly be distracted from his gloomy thoughts about his career as a stoker. A trio of arrogant boys surrounded a frightened student in the school corridor, starting some kind of dubious showdown. Blinded by his own self-confidence, the blonde brazenly pins the crying girl against the wall, demanding a date and ignoring her protests. The unfortunate schoolgirl screams in fear and closes her eyes, trying in blind terror to escape from the embrace of her pursuer. Vindictively turning verbal threats into action, he raises his hand to strike, trying to teach the girl a lesson at once for all her past refusals. Rushing into the brawl, the red-haired big guy lands a powerful kick to the insolent guy's jaw, effectively stopping the blonde's attempt to raise his hands. Having crashed into the wall at full speed after a crushing blow, the blonde falls silent while his stunned friends frighteningly try to find out if their brother who flew away is still alive. Carefully wiping tears from the frightened girl's face, the fiery-haired protector promises to protect her from local hooligans while she looks into his eyes with timid hope. The battered blonde man, hanging on the shoulders of his henchmen, spews curses and threats at the stranger, ordering his friends to call for reinforcements for reprisals. Clenching his jaws in rage, the enemy spat out a final threat, promising our hero cruel retribution for the disgrace in the corridor. Having dragged an impressive Hulk with dreadlocks along to the showdown, the victim theatrically pointed his finger at his offender. A menacing man with pigtails makes a scary face, trying to figure out who dared to offend his pocket blonde. This muscle man in a t-shirt is not at all afraid of problems and simply mockingly confirms his guilt. Showing off his bodyguard, the instigator of the skirmish is bursting with boasting, while the latter pathetically throws off his jacket for the upcoming fight. While the enemy is boasting about his position, this big guy pretends to back away, mockingly parodying fear. Our muscle man suddenly pulls out a whole stack of multicolored belts, planning to give every daredevil in this room their due. Instead of the expected blow, the formidable second-rank warrior suddenly fell to his knees, leaving his frightened friend to vainly try to bring his protector back to his senses. Looking at their opponent with new eyes, the hooligans realize that they are facing a 10-time champion, whose status makes their knees tremble with fear. While those around him try to digest what has happened, the master casually twirls the trophy rings on his finger, leaving his companion and enemies in complete shock. The dreadlocked muscle man recognizes the boy as the legendary Xiang Yang, known for his countless achievements. Sputtering with indignation, the little rascal screams hysterically at his protector, paralyzed with fear, not understanding the reason for his sudden cowardice. The big guy's heavy hand delivers a sound slap to the instigator, while he curses the day he decided to stand up for this idiot. Playing on the nerves of his opponents, Zhang Yang sarcastically offers them a choice of methods for receiving retribution, warming up his champion fist before the fight. Forgetting his pride in his jacket, the frightened brute bows to the ground, begging the legend for mercy for his blatant blindness and insolence. Deciding to show leniency, the winner, with a disgusted grimace, allows the unfortunate warrior to rise from his knees, ending this circus. As the corridor fell into a stifling silence, Xiang Yang approached his fallen opponent, who merely smiled obsequiously and thanked him, not daring to even move under the weight of his authority. Leaning almost to his face, the imperturbable master ingratiatingly whispers into the ear of the stunned poor fellow about his secret mission, turning him into an accomplice to the great secret. The guy's expression changed and he abruptly ended the conversation, promising to guard this secret like the apple of his eye. The newly minted keeper of secrets orders his stunned gang to leave immediately, pretending that they suddenly have more important things to do than get beat up by the legend. The whole gang, led by their leader, makes such a run for it that only their heels sparkle, fleeing from sin as far as possible. The tension melts away as the girl sees the backs of the running bullies, allowing herself to breathe out after a long day. The cutie blushes and counts her miraculous rescues, clearly hinting to the hero that he becomes her personal guardian angel on a permanent basis. And as a reward for all his exploits, the guy receives a tender kiss on the cheek, from which his stern champion face is filled with a treacherous blush. His charming companion gives him a promising look and a shy smile as he bids farewell, leaving Xiang Yang to digest his triumph in splendid isolation. Burning with anger, the bully spews curses at the departing men, vowing to give the master a good life. Leaving all decency at the door, the head teacher brazenly lies to the director, portraying the new employee as a monster who beat up his son. The head teacher, deeply offended, resorts to personal attacks, questioning Xiang Yang's professional suitability and morality, while he, along with loyal witnesses, watches this hysteria from behind the door. By brazenly breaking the silence, our champion makes the head teacher doubt his own rightness and cower in his chair. By overwhelming his opponent with a glance, the interrogator questions the head teacher's intelligence, turning the conversation into a humiliating lesson. The nasty old man waves papers, trying to overwhelm his opponent with the authority of his master's degrees and cool diplomas from the best universities. Maintaining complete calm, the boss calls the shouter to order, silencing him with one casual gesture. Swapping impudence for charm, the young man confirms the absence of an elite school, disarming critics with an honest admission. A long-faced snob in a beret is completely shocked by the dubious past of a new employee of an elite establishment. The teacher, shouting, demands that the insolent boy be thrown out, citing the fact that he lacks school knowledge. Showing remarkable ingenuity, he parries the attacks and confirms his intelligence, ignoring the lack of prestigious papers. Changing his tone to a patronizing one, the master questions the importance of the certificates, causing the head teacher to choke with anger. Without losing his dignity, our genius confirms his status as a doctor of science, finally knocking the ground out from under his opponent's feet. The stunned fat man froze with a silent question on his face, realizing the sudden failure of his grandiose plan. A fan of prestigious diplomas lands spectacularly on the table, confirming the presence of yet another doctorate in psychology. The list of achievements is replenished with mathematics, history, and astronomy, finally turning the boastful head teacher into a pathetic nobody. The overweight head teacher falls into cognitive dissonance, unable to comprehend the presence of so many diplomas in one person. With an ironic bow, the red-haired man advises the critic to apply to Stanford, turning his doubts to dust. Deeply moved, the companion sees in Xiang Yan not just a fighter, but a true strategist with a brilliant mind. The imperious beauty decisively closes the meeting, vetoing any debate about Xiang Yang's qualifications and ordering an investigation into the brawl. Forgetting about her business, the stately lady freezes in surprise when someone boldly calls her by name in a crowd of passers-by. Maintaining a mask of calm, the master thanks the lady for her support, while a subtle shadow of irony plays on his face. The shy beauty sharply denies her kindness, trying in vain to hide the telltale blush on her cheeks behind feigned indifference. Without hiding her irony, the girl justifies the harsh lesson for her colleagues, without suffering any unnecessary pangs of conscience. A pleased Xiang Yang breaks into a blissful smile, sincerely glad that this time he managed to get out of the water dry and avoid the stigma of guilt. The idyllic stroll is unceremoniously interrupted by the screeching brakes of a blue foreign car, causing the couple and a random passerby to flinch in surprise. An enraged old man waves his cane with all his might, showering the driver of a blue foreign car with choice curses for recklessly driving right in front of his nose. This guy gets out of the car with an arrogant look, casting a look of utter contempt towards his grumpy neighbor. Sputtering saliva, the rich kid yells at his grandfather, demanding that he get out of the way and not spoil his view with his beggarly presence. A confused Xiangyang tries to identify the intruder, while his companion suspiciously thinks about the arrogant stranger's name. Wang Chunming spreads his arms wide in a welcoming gesture, preparing for a hug. Beaming with false friendliness, the suitor flaunts an expensive bouquet and declares his devotion, trying to impress everyone around him with his pretentious lie. With icy calm, the elegant lady puts the impudent admirer in his place, explaining that it was only out of respect for his father that she had tolerated these intrusive signs of attention until now. With a pained expression, the rejected rich kid complains about sleepless nights and thoughts about Shinran, hoping to beg for a drop of pity and melt her cold heart. The awkward suitor closes his eyes and purses his lips in a comical attempt to steal a kiss, desperately begging the beautiful headmistress not to reject his passionate feelings. Looming menacingly over his hapless opponent, Xiangyang unceremoniously grabs him by the lips, reminding him in an icy tone who is the true protector of the beautiful lady. A crowd of students is savoring the latest gossip about the headmistress's affair, sincerely delighted by this turn of events. The girl who was recently rescued is now blushing because everyone around is sure that the hero is dating Xinran. Blushing with indignation, the girl furiously denies having a relationship, while the guy again switches on the mode of an impudent gentleman. The poor guy with the flattened face makes inarticulate sounds, while the cunning red-haired hero continues his cunning manipulations. Looming over his companion, the young man whispers in her ear a demand to behave quietly, promising in return to quickly and effectively neutralize the annoying rich kid. Through the fighter's powerful hand, the duck-like lips of the blue-haired ladies' man demand that he be released. While the blue-haired guy strains his vocal cords to attract the attention of passers-by, our master calmly prepares a compelling response that will cool the ardor of any loudmouth. The cheeky jock found the best way to shut the screamer up. He simply kissed the girl passionately right in front of him. The psyche of these poor schoolgirls was shattered with a loud crash by the passionate kiss of the headmistress in Xiangyang. One confident glance from the redhead was enough for the stern blonde to turn into an embarrassed schoolgirl. The winner, with a sly grin, hugged his strict boss and now finishes off the screamer with a control question. The rejected dreamer sincerely believes that the volume of his desperate howl will help him secure his rights to this girl. Having failed in a verbal duel, this aggressive athlete decided to take the conflict to the physical level. The formidable Avenger spectacularly fainted, foaming at the mouth, without ever landing a blow on his opponent. With icy calm, the girl explains the situation, assuring her defender that the loser twitching on the asphalt is not dangerous, but has simply suddenly fallen ill. The newly minted doctor knelt down next to the patient and prepared to act himself, realizing that the medics would not be able to make it in time. Without wasting any time, our muscle man searches for a suitable instrument among passers-by, planning to conduct an emergency medical session and literally pull the guy back from the brink of death. To provide first aid, Xiang Yan plans to use a hairpin, relying on his hidden medical talents. Carefully heating the pin over the flame, the kind daredevil seriously intends to bring the poor fellow to his senses by any means necessary. While Sinran obediently restrains the victim, the savior prepares to perform a medical miracle. Aiming the tip of the hairpin at his neck, Zhang Yang is about to bring the poor guy back to consciousness with one very precise and quick move. But he is suddenly interrupted by a shout from the crowd. The important moment is interrupted by a loud cry from an old man in the crowd who suddenly decided to challenge the boy's medical qualifications. In a completely calm tone, the young man explained to the grumpy grandfather that he was well versed in the ancient technique of acupuncture. Losing patience, the angry old man in the funny hat furiously proves to the crowd his exclusive right to heal people. In a panic, the grandfather calls the nurse for help, hoping to throw the insolent guy out before he has time to use his strange therapy on the unfortunate patient. The obedient girl clutched the hero's hand tightly, tearfully begging him not to interfere with the great master. Trying her best to pull the guy away, the poor girl is simply panicking at the prospect of another scolding from her evil boss. The self-confident doctor sincerely doesn't understand how one can learn medicine from short videos on the internet. The blue-haired wretch suddenly comes to his senses, and the shocked crowd immediately proclaims Xiang Yang as the savior. From such an incredible ending, the old doctor literally explodes with a wild cry of absolute incomprehension. A grandfather and a nurse drag a blue-haired whiner while he complains about helicopters, and the grandfather racks his brains from shock. Charmed by the hero's talent, the witness does not skimp on compliments, extolling his golden hands and calling him the only true savior. The modest guy just smiles sweetly in response, brushing off the praise like an annoying fly. Having barely come to his senses, Chuming showered the savior with threats, promising to give him a sweet life and make him bitterly regret it. A cunning doctor advises a psychotic patient to take care of his nerves, otherwise he will have to be treated again. Choking with impotent rage, the blue-haired boy curses his opponent, unable to bear that indifferent gaze and aura of complete superiority. The frightened old man strongly recommends that the aggressive gentleman immediately crawl towards the house. Already walking away, the offended epileptic turns around and menacingly promises the red-haired man that he will definitely continue. Breathing a sigh of relief, the tired hero sincerely rejoices at the long-awaited disappearance of this problematic type. Grateful Shinran decides to fatten up her savior by inviting him to dinner. The stunned redhead refuses to believe the words of the formidable headmistress, loudly screaming his disbelief throughout the street. Finding herself in a posh restaurant, a devoted fan with a stiletto heel drools over the sumptuous dishes in front of her. The hungry girl's eyes literally glow with wild delight at the sight of such a gigantic feast. The generous Xiang Yang advises her to stuff herself to the brim, receiving only a satisfied moan in response. A sudden awakening of conscience makes the guest doubt her appropriateness at this elite dinner. While consoling his friend, the cunning savior adds a hairpin to her feet, while the real customer of the banquet is seething with anger. The boss's sharp heel vengefully digs into the foot of the chatterbox under the table, causing him to make a funny face. Cold Jinran urges everyone to quickly destroy the food, interrupting the guy's ridiculous attempts to express his indignation. Meanwhile, suspicious waiters are eyeing the company, tensely comparing the boss's face with the photograph. The evil food service workers finally recognize the wealthy client as their main criminal target for the evening. The cunning waitress maliciously whispers to her accomplice that the stupid fish swam into their net on its own. Moving on to carry out her evil plan, the waitress brings the unsuspecting boys a bottle of champagne. Citing the establishment's anniversary and an unexpected promotion, the girl explains to the boys that this is a gift for couples, paid for by the restaurant. A rich guy and his lady pass by the table, and upon hearing the waitress's words, obstinately discuss the trio in a bad light. Restaurant patrons also took notice of the trio, romanticizing their get-togethers with disapproval. The young schoolgirl stood up from the table with the hope of disproving the rumors. Addressing a passing girl with a rich boy, the pink-haired girl explains their relationship between a teacher and a student, demanding an apology. Stunned by the girl's audacity, the visitor turned to look at her with a fierce look of wounded pride. Calling her opponent names, the adult aunt grabs the schoolgirl by the hair. In defense of his fan, Xiang Yang stood up from the table, demanding that the schoolgirl be released. At this time, Shinran remained alone at the table, which the waitress noticed, giving a sign to her accomplice. Taking the rich kid by the collar and dropping him several times, Xiang Yang explained his mistake to him clearly. The fat man's mistress also did not remain in peace, and having received a lesson, sat down on the floor bursting into tears. Having taken his fan away from her tormentors, the young man is genuinely surprised by the strangeness and malice of people. Returning to the table, Xiang Yang discovers that Shinran is missing. This huge muscle man managed to lose his girlfriend in a second, and then simply sent his companion home. The bearded old man in the hat suddenly gave up all the waiters, sending the pumped-up guy straight to the kitchen to sort things out. The strong man took off so abruptly that his companion simply went speechless and froze in complete bewilderment. Behind the chain-link fence, a suspicious-looking guy is fiddling with the trunk of a car, while a red-haired guy stares at him in complete horror. Loudly urging his clumsy assistants on, the half-naked man forces them to quickly push the poor girl into the trunk. Seeing the kidnapping, the red-haired giant screamed the girl's name as if it could magically stop the villains. The poor thing, bound hand and foot, with her mouth taped shut, only glares angrily in the cramped space of the trunk. Through the thick tape on her lips, the kidnapped girl makes an inarticulate moan, desperately trying to reach her savior. Waving his arms furiously, the half-naked gang leader orders his loyal minions to immediately seize the hero. Like a real superhero, Xiangyang dramatically jumped over the high fence to save his lady love. Having been punched and kicked in the face, the hapless bandits turned into living targets for practicing combat techniques. Having scattered his opponents in different directions, the guy calmly surveys the battlefield and his fallen enemies. While the red-haired hero waves his fists, the kidnappers carry the poor girl away at full speed in an unknown direction. With an evil glint in his eyes, the Avenger vows to catch the kidnappers at any cost and save his friend. Taking advantage of the opportunity, this guy frantically takes out his phone to quickly inform the officer about the kidnapping that took place. Mencken orders the guy to go to the department, and as soon as they find out where Zhenran is, to immediately go after her. Obediently agreeing, Xiangyang gets into his car and drives at full speed to the police station. Arriving at the department, the young man finds the officer at work, inquiring about the progress of his case. The girl provides a tablet with information about the kidnapper's route, stating that they stopped at an abandoned warehouse. In one voice, a couple of brave heroes got ready to go after the villains. Meanwhile, screams are heard in the area of the old warehouse. Apparently, someone is screaming hysterically at his subordinates. A pompous gang leader scolds his accomplices for not carrying out the plan correctly. One of the hoteliers, holding the kidnapped director on his shoulder, assures his master that he can be calm, despite the fact that some minor troubles have arisen. The bald man threw his loot on the floor, proving that the task had been fully completed. With a nasty grin, the kidnapper shamelessly grabs the girl by the chin, admiring her beauty and anticipating the enormous profit from capturing such valuable prey. After freeing her mouth from the duct tape, Zhenran angrily demands answers from the bandits about who they are and why they dared to kidnap her. The blue-haired bandit points a folding knife threateningly at the kidnapped girl, forcing her to fall silent in horror. Mockingly pressing the tip of his knife to Shinran's blouse, the bandit offers to tell her father the secret of the dragon's pulse hidden within her. Sincerely not understanding the essence of the claims, the captive, in complete bewilderment, asks the bandit what other nonsense he is talking about this pulse. Carefully prying the button with the tip of the knife, the villain tears it off the blouse with a light movement, causing the girl to scream hysterically. Grinning wickedly, the mad kidnapper licks the blade and promises his victim that her torment will soon be over. Before he could finish his vicious speech, the smug kidnapper and his accomplices were blown apart by a powerful explosion. Having barely recovered from the powerful explosion, the stunned bandit in a blue shirt curses furiously and tries to understand what just happened. Taking a pompous drag on his cigarette, this red-haired lifeguard stumbles into a party uninvited and announces from the doorway that Dad is in the building and everyone needs to dry their pants. An enraged bandit in a purple shirt pulls out a pistol and yells in a rage that he will now stuff the intruder with lead like a pig. Dodging bullets with a calm expression, the red-haired guy contemptuously advises the shooter to go and learn marksmanship. The stunned bandit, in complete shock, tries to comprehend how this is even possible. Taking off with incredible speed, Xiangyang dashes straight towards the armed bandit leader. Instantly closing the distance to a minimum, the boy delivers a powerful and crushing uppercut to the gang leader's jaw. Flying back from the jaw-dropping hit, the blue-haired guy falls to the floor like a sack, completely losing control of the situation. The leader, gritting his teeth, curses his offender, but a cunning plan suddenly matures in his head. He remembers his hostage, timidly tied up and lying on the floor. Noticing his fake girlfriend, Zhang Yang became anxious in anticipation of danger. The bandit lifted the girl from the floor, put the gun to her head, and took her hostage. Out of fear, the headmistress almost silently asked Xiangyan to save her. Seeing such impudence, the young man furiously advises the dandy not to touch Shinran. Meanwhile, outside the abandoned warehouse, Officer Mengchen gives the order to his team to begin the rescue operation for Mrs. Liu. A helicopter appeared out of nowhere at high speed above the building and hovered precisely above the roof. Confused, the group commander does not understand whose helicopter it might be. Having dragged the girl onto the roof and using a ramp dropped from the plane, the gang leader holds his hostage at gunpoint, prematurely gloating over his victory. Helplessly watching this freak slip away, Xiang Yan has no choice but to curse him. A moment later, the bandit kicks the girl hard in the back, causing her to fall straight to the floor. Having said a cruel goodbye, the blue-haired dandy pointed his gun at his hostage, intending to shoot. Fearing her impending death, the girl watches him in silent horror as tears stream down her cheeks. Meanwhile, Xiangyang rushes to her aid, breaking away and closing the distance. The shot and the sound of a whistling bullet ripped through the entire area. It hit its target. However, such a loud and frightening sound was caused by the pistol of Officer Mengshin, who managed to help the boys. The bullet hit the villain right in the hand in which he was holding the weapon. The commander gives the order to his group to give chase so as not to lose this freak. Later that night, Xiangyang brought Shinran home and called the doctor for an examination, where he heard that she was fine despite a few bruises. The good-natured gray-haired man assures us of the need for observation in the coming days and quickly leaves. Realizing his mistake, the red-haired hunk apologizes to the girl, shooting her guilty eyes. In exchange for an apology, the strict headmistress gives in to a traitorous blush, thanking the guy for saving her once again. Embarrassed by this behavior, the bodyguard waves off the gratitude and gets ready to leave in order to give the victim some rest. Without hesitation, the girl grabs the guy by the hand, demanding that he stop. With her eyes downcast shyly, Shinran asks her savior to stay the night with her. Having interpreted the girl's proposal in his own way, the boy was pleasantly shocked by such a proposal. Waiting to put his piquant thoughts into action, the hero hurried to the headmistress's bed. Realizing that such a slow-witted person should have been more specific about his desires, Shinran visibly tensed up. Having given the red-haired fool a merciless slap, the girl burst into screams and explanations of her true desire. The next day, standing in the school stadium, Zhang Yang contemplates the night's brawl, once again upset that his heroism received no reward. Brushing off the past night, the boy vigorously nods his head in order to perk up and get ready for the lesson. Before the start of the lesson, the newly appointed teacher observes a completely familiar scene where the schoolgirls are lined up in a strict row and the boys cannot calm down. Zhang Yang adopted a stern tone, immediately setting boundaries and addressing those who violated discipline. A daredevil from the crowd, squatting with cheap show-offs, decided to snap back at the gym teacher. Recognizing the youth as the very leader of the gang of bullies, the young teacher is in anticipation of the upcoming reprisal. Having put the punks in their place, Zhang Yang turned on the evil policeman, immediately making it clear to the rascals that this was no place for them to play. The red-haired gym teacher gives the school children their first task, namely to run 10 laps. Unwilling to obey the teacher's orders, the blonde burst into laughter, flatly refusing to carry out the task. Looming over the class's steep slope, Xiangyang offers him a compromise: to run with them, but on the condition that for every 2 laps the teacher runs, the students only have to run 1. After some time, the merciless gym teacher finishes his 80th lap, teasing the students of his class. Gasping for breath in a half-faint, the blonde tries his best to squeeze out the suggestion that the teacher was born in the year of the dog. Amazed by his result, meanwhile, the girls in the class acted as cheerleaders, praising the teacher with all their might. Running past his fans, the young gym teacher waves to them and shouts thanks, basking in the rays of applause. Before he had even had time to settle into the stands, his biggest fan ran up to the over-muscled marathon runner, offering him a bottle of water. Sitting down on a bench, the gym teacher was suddenly showered with the attention of his fans, who offered him a massage. Sitting to the side, the cool kid in the class watches with envy as the girls in his class flirt with the teacher. Unwilling to accept his defeat, the blonde has no choice but to envy and choke on his own poison. The offended hero picked up a stone from the ground and threw it towards the teacher. With a slight movement of his finger, the gym teacher knocks back the stone that was flying at him. The hard object ricocheted off the steel finger so hard that it hit the schoolboy right in the nose, knocking him out. Watching the school's coolest guy crumble, the teacher indifferently suggests moving on to the main part of the lesson, self-defense. After demonstrating the basics of combat, Zhang Yang began to correct the students' stances. With her eyes shining like the cat from Shrek, the student asked the handsome man if she is doing everything correctly. Overwhelmed by the girl's excessive attention, Zhang Yang is torn between their requests to check their movements as well. Suddenly, the stadium was filled with a woman's scream calling the gym teacher's name, which he paid attention to. The screaming one was Shinran, who came running with the bad news that Vice Principal Zhang was in the hospital, taking the teacher right out of class. Hearing his father's name, the blonde man came to his senses, asking what happened. The director and the teacher had to take this hysterical boy with them, who, worried about his father's condition, almost tore down the door to the ward. Upon entering the room, the trio were met with an interesting sight. A man wrapped in bandages like a mummy was lying on a couch, and a middle-aged woman was whining above him. Not understanding what was happening, the gym teacher decided to ask what had happened, expecting to successfully beat up the head teacher. To everyone's surprise, the woman spoke up, blaming Xiang Yang for the incident. The man had allegedly been walking down the street and cursing at the gym teacher, for which he had gotten a beating. The lady decided to tell them a story about how she and her man were walking around the city, where he scolded the achievements of a young teacher. Hearing Zhang Yang's name, some skinheads passing by decided to join in the conversation, asking if the chubby guy knew the guy. The head teacher only snapped back unsuccessfully, to which the local thugs pulled out a wooden and oblong argument. Having finished her story, the woman continued to sniffle, cursing the young teacher as if he had crossed someone's path. Contemplating what he heard, Xiang recognized the description as members of the Qingma sect, realizing that it was not safe to remain in the hospital. Without waiting a moment, the boy grabbed the head mistress by the hand and led her out of the ward. Walking down the hospital corridor, the red-haired man noticed a gray-haired man in a hat snoring on the couch. Xiangyang shows off his sleight of hand in an instant, pulling the stylish hat off the sleeping man. Having put that very headdress on the girl, the gym teacher asked her to behave quietly and not show it. From this gesture, the gray-haired man woke up, smiling slyly and looking after the departing couple. The sound of fingers snapping echoed down the corridor that served as the starting point for the operation. A nurse jumped out from around the corner of the hospital corridor, blocking the way for the physical education teacher and the head mistress. The gray-haired man in the suit also rose from his seat, which the red-haired guy noticed, realizing that they were squeezed from both sides. The nurse and the mafia boss stepped on the gas in unison, racing toward the couple with the determination and grace of hungry seagulls spotting an unattended chaburek. The purple-haired fury soared upward, deciding to test the strength of Shinran's jaw with her flying heel. The valiant bodyguard stopped the blow with his hand, blocking the path to the girl. The strong grip on his partner's ankle greatly confused the man running behind. Thanks to Xiangyang's masterclass on throwing heavy objects, the man received an unexpected package in the form of his own accomplice. The villains finally achieved social distancing, flying several meters away from their target with the grace of sacks of potatoes. Cursing her disguise, the purple-haired girl unbuttons her shirt, quickly recovering from the dizzying reception. Seeing what's hidden underneath the nurse's uniform, Xiangyan recognizes it as a ninja's outfit. Having shed her uniform, the girl produces a loud whistle, which serves as a command for the ninja squad to enter battle. Giving a command to the crowd of her louts, the girl rose to her feet, ordering everyone to grab the target. Taking the girl by the hand, Xiangyang orders her to run, turning in a different direction. The blonde was speechless when a couple burst into his room, causing an incomprehensible commotion. Like a small dog, the red-haired gym teacher grabbed the boy by the hair and ordered him to be quiet, pulling him along with him. Grabbing the boys in his arms, Zhang Yang jumped out the window, giving them an unscheduled lesson in high-speed parachuting. The trio rushed down while the blonde's tears worked more powerfully than a fire hose, irrigating the facade in the rhythm of his panicked scream. Meanwhile, a group of villains entered the room from which the group of guys were catapulted. Looking out of the broken window, the gray-haired villain curses the gym teacher who was leaving him. The purple-haired girl orders the group to leave the departing boys alone, explaining that the street is too crowded. Looking at the empty window, the Fury only smiled mysteriously and admitted that this Xian Yang had managed to truly surprise her. Landing on bags of garbage, the red-haired man worriedly inquires about the girl's condition, while the fair-haired man is hysterical and recovers from fear. Shocked by everything that happened, the girl cannot put together a couple of words, simply nodding her head. After collecting her thoughts, Xinran tells her bodyguard that she has slightly injured her leg. Without hesitation, Xiangyang took the girl's leg under the pretext of a local examination. After the caring teacher removed the headmistress's shoe, he noticed an abrasion on her foot. During the examination, the girl screamed in pain. With a deep blush and the look of an enthusiastic maniac, Xiangyang promises a gentle massage. Having received a timid consent, this giant, crimson with delight, blossomed as if he had won the lottery. The witness froze, wondering whether the big guy was treating someone else's heel or was simply trying to seduce her in such a strange way. In the middle of a dubious massage, she suddenly decided to find out why everyone wanted to kill her and what kind of dragon pulse this was. The blonde was taken aback by the question about the dragon's pulse, while the stern massage master painfully searched his head for a worthy answer. After a powerful blow to the jaw, the boy quickly learns his lesson, the master making it clear that some secrets should remain hidden from prying eyes. The irritated red-haired giant decided to put a stop to unnecessary questions, and without turning around, simply knocked out the curious blonde with a powerful blow to the elbow. Gently putting his arm around the girl's shoulders, the red-haired hero avoided a direct answer, promising to explain everything later and assuring her that he was only here to protect her. Touched by such concern, the girl meekly nodded in response, finally entrusting her fate to this strange but reliable protector. In an unknown hideout, the gang leader flew into a rage, throwing things off the table, realizing that the target had slipped away from under his very nose. In a rage, the boss scolded his subordinate, calling her a useless ninja from the clan and declaring that she was of absolutely no use. With their heads bowed, the subordinates silently listened to the dandy's angry tirade, not daring to even breathe under his withering gaze. The princess of the underworld suggests her prince change tactics, as the endless squads of thugs have failed to catch their target. With a sly smile, the assistant suggests to the leader that he play on the target's financial difficulties and, through former classmates, lure her into a prearranged trap. The redhead is perplexed by the suddenness of the plans, while his companion sees in this unexpected meeting a chance to find new sponsors. Lowering her sunglasses, the girl playfully invites her bodyguard to go shopping. Walking through the narrow streets, Xiang notices the abundance of beautiful girls walking in the crowd. Instead of looking for clothes for an important meeting, the guy flirts with the girls standing behind the glass in the store. A sudden call from his companion interrupted him from such a pleasant pastime. Shinran has found a suit for her companion and asked him to try it on. Coming out of the fitting room, Xiangyang put on a smart black suit with a red shirt and tie. Accustomed to the guy's greasy t-shirt, Shinran didn't expect that this red-haired handsome man would suit suits. Having squeezed the guy into namesakes, the director and the store employee decided to correct several details in his image. Stunned by the abundant female attention from both sides, the hero can barely contain his steam. The same blue-haired epileptic appears in the store, accompanied by two ladies, who does not miss the opportunity to emphasize his major status. In defense of her subordinate, Shinran intervenes in the conversation, suggesting that the unsuccessful suitor wash his mouth with soap. With the support of his companions, Chunming calls Xiangyang a typical ragamuffin. Trying to make the gym teacher look ridiculous, the poor guy insults the guy's luxurious appearance. A hidden kick interrupted the blue-haired weirdos, muttering about whether the red-haired teacher would have enough money for such a jacket. Having flown several meters and pressed his muzzle against the wall, Chunming landed on the floor. Watching the graceful fall, Xiang asked the poor guy if he should take this whole show as an offer to pay for the suit. Chunming's worried companions immediately ran up to him, asking if he was okay. Enraged by such impudence and assertiveness, the blue-haired eccentric angrily pronounces the name of his offender. The young man confidently presents his gold card, ignoring the shouts of the crowd and surprising the store employee. An angry guy with clenched teeth is furious at his opponent, who has already managed to humiliate him in front of the public twice. Having lost control of himself, the madman opens his mouth wide in a piercing scream, calling for security and furiously clenching his fists in recognition of his own powerlessness. The guards arrive at the call of Mr. Wang, who, in a rage, orders his men to immediately teach the offender a lesson. A group of burly guards instantly react to the order, shouting out their agreement in unison and preparing to immediately eliminate any obstacle in their boss's path. The formidable young man pompously talks about the influence of his family, promising to cause a huge scandal and tear everything to pieces right here and now. While Shinran awaits the blow in horror, the red-haired impudent man only grins pompously, but someone's menacing shout suddenly puts the brawl on pause. Having replaced the noise of the fight with the clink of heels, the owner of the territory comes out to the trespassers, securely protected by the powerful backs of huge security guards in formal suits. The blue-haired guy turns into an offended child and plaintively snitches to the boutique owner about his opponent. Noticing a familiar profile, the striking woman freezes, not believing her eyes. She recognizes the features of the school's great founder in the random intruder. The shocked woman realizes that the legendary Master Xiang stands before her, possessing a unique map. Stunning the red-haired hero, Yan Yu throws herself into his arms, searching the master's eyes for a spark of recognition and hoping that years of separation have not erased it from his memory. Shangyan looks at the girl running up to him with a puzzled expression and suddenly remembers how, as a child, she insisted on a kiss from him. Covering his face with his hand, the boy endures Yan Yu's embrace under the puzzled and piercing gaze of his companion. Grabbing the redhead painfully by the ear, Shinran furiously demands an immediate explanation about his relationship with this girl. During the commotion, the hero manages to explain to his jealous companion that Yan Yu is just like an older sister to him. Meanwhile, the blue-haired rich kid, visibly tensed up, realizing Xiang's close connection with such important people. With his tail between his legs, Wang tried to sneak out of the store, but was caught in a surrender by Yanyu, who inquired about his direction of travel. The stern brunette explains to the upstart who built this shopping center, wondering how he dared accuse Xiang of stealing. With lost eyes, Mr. Wang began to shoot at everyone present, realizing that the red-haired gym teacher was not as simple as he seemed. Pathetically making excuses about the misunderstanding, the blue-haired boy receives a sharp order from the stern owner to run as fast as he can. Dropping the last of his pride behind him, Chunming runs out of the boutique with the speed of an Olympic marathon runner. Arriving at the Tangdu Club, Shinran started talking about how Yanyu heroically scared poor Wang into running away, while Xiang puts it down to pure luck. Otherwise, he would have given it to him himself. Hearing the bold statement, the pink-haired girl playfully pokes her companion in the forehead, calling him a bully. Entering the huge hall, the couple observes a large crowd of people dressed in formal suits and talking about various topics. Right next to a large buffet, the cute couple was noticed by a man in a pink suit sitting in his chair with 2 bodyguards, while he reported on the phone that Ms. Liu had arrived at the scene. Walking through the huge hall, all the girls there envied Xinjia and her handsome boyfriend. A purple-haired girl with a bob and a glass of wine decided to ask her friend where she found such a handsome guy, to which she began to shyly giggle. The girl didn't play coy and asked the guy directly if he was serious with Xinran. While the suited dandies discussed and quietly envied the guy for his looks and his luck in snagging the most beautiful girl in school. Among the crowd, there was an envious epileptic who did nothing but mentally curse his red-haired opponent. The weakling noticed a man in a pink suit sitting at a distance from the others, recognizing him as an old acquaintance. The toady, without missing a chance, approached the man to say hello and ask about his health, almost bowing at his feet. Turning his influential attention to the flea, Mr. Du did not stand on ceremony and irritably asked what he wanted. With considerable effort, the blue-haired weirdo shared that he had learned that Xiangyang's mother had built the Manhwa shopping center. Noticing that he remembered Mr. Du's losing tender, Chunming offers his help in taking revenge. Intrigued by the plan to suck up, the man listened to him with interest. While the couple was chatting peacefully with the event's attendees, someone called out to Shinran, which caught her attention. Turning to the one who called her, the bungler knocks the glass of wine away from his friend. The red semi-dry stain spread right across the Shinran's blouse, leaving the usual blot, like in a Rorschach test. The acquaintance immediately began to apologize, taking all the blame onto her clumsy hands. Hearing the commotion, the red-haired gentleman approached his companion to ask if everything was okay, to which she replied that she would go and change. Taking the initiative under the pretext of correcting her mistake, the purple-haired girl called for Shinran to be taken to the restroom. Noticing the epileptic watching in the shadows, Zhang Yang wondered how safe this idea was. A wicked grin formed on the girl in the purple dress's face as she led Shinran into the room. The headmistress visibly tensed up when she saw that same idiotic Chunming and Mr. Du in the room, patiently waiting for the girl to arrive. Before she could come to her senses, the girl accompanying Xinran sprayed the unknown contents of the can right into her face. Her legs became weak and her vision blurred. The headmistress fell exhausted onto the bed, watching the terrible grimaces of the people hanging over her. While lighting a cigarette, the ruthless Mr. Du demands that Chunming be careful. Taking off his belt, the blue-haired epileptic with the eyes of a maniac firmly declares the seriousness of his intentions. Unable to lift a finger, Shinran begs Chunming not to do anything stupid. The malicious pubertal boy sarcastically refuses to listen to the defenseless girl. The whole fight is stopped by a loud sound that fills the entire room. Kicked down the door, Xiangyang burst into the room, demanding that she take her hands off her companion. Everyone who was in the room at the time noticed the uninvited guest. The blue-haired whistling teapot was completely surprised by Xiangyang's arrival. Thinking he was Bruce Lee, Mr. Du threw down his cigarette and declared that he would deal with the troublemaker himself. The red-haired bodyguard demands once again that the girl be released, to which he receives a loud refusal and clear directions for his movements. The old man swung at the guy, but the blow was too slow that Xiangyang dodged it without any effort. Grabbing Mr. Du by his expensive shirt, young Jackie Chan unceremoniously threw the man over himself. In a matter of seconds, the luxurious pink suit, along with its owner, flew straight to the exit of the hotel room. Security guards passing through the corridor saw a peculiar tumbleweed, shocked and amazed by their boss's breakdance. 2 guards approached to check on Mr. Lin's condition, ordering the third to seize the offender. A hotel worker came out to the noise and, observing everything that was happening, decided to call the police. After some time, several cars of brave law enforcement officers arrived at the entrance of the hotel. Having knocked out the guards, Xiangyang glares at the hysteria maestro, who in response heroically threatens to scream deafeningly. With bloodlust in his eyes, the red-haired berserker wonders what harm Madame Shinran did to this epileptic for him to behave like this. The blue-haired freak only voices his lustful plans for this girl. Extremely outraged by what he heard, Xiang restrains himself with all his might, asking again to make sure he had not misheard. Chunming noticed his opponent preparing to deliver a crushing blow and decided to remind him of the illegality of hitting people. In anticipation of a brutal reprisal, Xiangyang had already swung his fist at the weirdo. However, the dental procedure to remove several molars is interrupted by a stern order from an officer who enters the room. Stopping the blow a centimeter from Chunming's lip, Xiangyang turned his attention to the police officers who had entered. While the red-haired strongman is surprised by the arrival of his old acquaintance, the epileptic tensed up, realizing that he would be imprisoned for what he did to Shinran. Taking advantage of the moment while the Avenger turned his attention to the commander, the blue-haired gymnast began to climb out the window. Officer Mengqin orders his henchmen to capture Chunming, while the slowpoke Xiangyang realizes what is happening. Finally, the red-haired hero realized that his target was running away, and just as he decided to jump out the window after him, he was stopped by Xinran's timid voice. Hugging her valiant knight, the poor girl asks him not to leave. Raising her clouded eyes, she asks not to be left alone. Before he could explain to the Fury that he needed to escape, Shinran asked him for help because she was feeling very bad. In the head of the lustful gym teacher, a fierce battle is waged between an angel and a demon, offering him two completely different outcomes. As soon as the girl's hand touched the branded leather belt, the red-haired bodyguard was shocked and jumped away from her like a scalded cat. With a gentle movement of his hand, the brave hero satisfied the girl in all aspects. The sharp sound and vibration of the phone from the pocket interrupted the romance here. On the other end of the line was Officer Mengqin, calling with orders for Xiangyang to report to the station because they had captured Lin Qingnan. In the interrogation room, the officer tried her best to extract information about the suspect's connection to Ma Baonim. In response to the respectable man's awkward refusal to provide information, the girl showed him the correspondence from his phone, citing the fact that they had planned everything together. Having called the police officer a fool, the suspect is in no hurry to give testimony and feels very confident. The girl could not tolerate such treatment, and angrily squeezing the piece of paper, her eyes filled with cruelty and cold-bloodedness. Threatening harsh reprisals, the commander's subordinate managed to grab her in order to calm her down. Mr. Du is too confident in himself and continues to provoke the beast with a calm face. Another officer urgently arrived in the interrogation room to tell the commander bad news. The already angry girl had no time for the employee. She snapped rudely at him, under the guise of being busy. The man approached his commander and whispered the words of the head of the department that this smug Mr. Du needed to be let go. Hearing the pleasant news, the man in the pink suit chuckled maliciously, putting his finger to his upper lip. Meanwhile, Xiangyang arrived at the station and sat down on the steps while waiting for Officer Mengqin. A moment later, the girl went down to the red-haired Punisher, asking how long he had been waiting. Noticing his acquaintance, the young man wondered about the results of the interrogation, abruptly jumping up from his seat. Clutching her head, Mencken informed Yang that the narcissist's lawyer had appeared in the middle of the interrogation, and they had to release him due to a lack of grounds for detention. The gym teacher assumes that Mr. Du is connected with the Qingma sect and that he cannot be let go so easily, looking hopefully at the officer. During the conversation, the girl comes up with an idea where Xiangyang will follow the narcissist, giving him the car number. With a sly grin, the officer demands that they not let him go, confidently assuring them that he will bring Xiangyang to the organizer. A couple of blocks from the site, a black, expensive car drives calmly along the city streets. Inside this car sits that same Mr. Du, grateful to his lawyer for his timely appearance. A driver, noticing a sinister bicycle with a man on it in his side mirror, reports the pursuit to his boss. Out of curiosity, the narcissist looked out of the window to identify the guy who was following them. With the speed of a ghost rider, Xiangyang on his iron horse races at full speed, cursing his target. Mr. Du, amazed that the guy on the bike is catching up with them, orders his driver to go faster. The pedal is to the metal, and the smell of burning rubber spreads through the block as Xiangyang struggles to catch up with the car. Reaching a crowded street, the driver warns his boss about the dangers of high-speed driving, to which the boss responds with complete indifference, just wanting to get away from the speeding Avenger. Like in a Fast and Furious movie, the chase continues until both drivers arrive in a pedestrian area. Having stopped the car around the corner, the driver informed his boss that he could not proceed further. The weirdo in the pink suit ran out of the car, firing his subordinate. As he skids his trusty bike around a turn, Xiang realizes he needs to move on foot from here. The red-haired marathon runner took off, jumping off his bike as he went. Jan set off in pursuit, watching as the pink suit unceremoniously pushed past people passing by. Confident in his abilities, the physical education teacher understands that the goal is unstoppable, and he will definitely catch up with it. In the crowd, the teacher hears a painfully familiar voice offering cold snacks. It was that same faithful fan of his who wanted to earn pocket money. Xiang Yang called out to Qing Yu to get out of the way, but the slow-witted student only managed to turn around at the sound of his voice, recognizing her teacher. Running up to the girl, Lin grabbed her hand, coming up with another evil plan. Pink Suit took Xiang Yang's student hostage, threatening to wring her neck if he came closer. Frozen at a safe distance, the young man menacingly brands his opponent a maniac, hoping that the stream of dirty words will somehow touch this icy proud man. The feisty girl, not satisfied with the man's embrace, bit his hand, causing him to cry out in pain. Taking advantage of the moment, Qingya breaks free from the brute's iron grip and runs away, trying to escape from his pursuer as quickly as possible. The girl barely managed to duck before her teacher, like Jackie Chan, pressed his moccasin to the offender's face. Having knocked Lin out, the gym teacher immediately ran up to the girl, inquiring about her condition. The adrenaline ran out and Qingya burst into tears from fear and confusion, while Xiang tries to comfort her and provide protection. With a mark on his cheek, the man was able to rise to his feet in order to carry out another insidious plan. Shouting out bold threats and curses, the brave Mr. Lin, his heels flashing, took off at full speed in the other direction. Not wanting to leave his student alone in such a state, Xiang Yang let the runner go, vowing that they would meet again very soon. To catch his breath and get some refreshment, the boy dragged the girl to the nearest cafe. Looking at his teacher with loving eyes, Qingya is surprised by their unexpected meeting. Chewing on a piece of food, Xiang assures her it's just a coincidence and asks why she's working part-time in this neighborhood. The girl was lost in thought, quietly saying that money was desperately needed for her mother's treatment. This feat interested the red-haired fighter, causing him to praise the girl. After some time, a waitress approached the table and brought the young man's order. As soon as the plate came into the guy's field of vision, he immediately suspected something was wrong. Through Sherlock Holmes-like deduction, Xiang Yang realized that the tofu was suspiciously cut into small pieces. The red-haired Olympian decided to call back to the departing waitress. The girl turned around without enthusiasm, playing the role of a diligent cafe worker to the very end. Xing quickly realized what was going on and threw the plate straight at the purple-haired beast. Shielding the schoolgirl with his body, the boy slyly asks if they have met before, carefully examining the girl. Getting into a ninja fighting stance, the girl praised the red-haired man's attentiveness. In anticipation of a merciless battle, the teacher advises the schoolgirl to leave. But despite everything that is happening, the girl is worried about the unfinished workday. Smiling softly, Xiang promises to settle the matter with her employer personally. The girl had no choice but to run out of the cafe in fear. Noticing a missing detail in the form of an absent partner, the gentleman in a black suit hastily informs his opponent about it. The Avenger couldn't wait for an answer before he felt a kunai flying at his back, and catching it in midair, he noticed that same ward. The gray-haired man praises Xiang Yang's reaction, not at all ashamed of his vile attempt to stab him in the back. Having placed the kunai on the table, the guy suggested doing without pleasantries and inquired about the organizer of the scene. A couple of mercenaries drawing their blades went on the attack, assuring him that the guy didn't need to know about this because he would soon die. Desperately fighting off numerous attacks, the boy tries to think through each of his moves. Having dodged the katana of the mustachioed master, Xiang vowed to finish them quickly. In the midst of the brawl, Qingya returned to the cafe, bringing with her 2 men in formal suits. The mercenaries noticed the uninvited guests and stopped the fight. The experienced killer realized that there were a large number of witnesses and gave his partner the order to retreat. After throwing a couple of smoke bombs, the killers disappeared from the radar. After the smoke cleared and everyone watching cleared their throats, the agents could only marvel at their instant dissolution. Qingya ran to her teacher, worried about his condition. The young man quickly reassured her that he was fine, and before he could ask a counter question, he immediately received an answer about how, luckily for the girl, a couple of police officers had come across nearby. Playing along with his student's intelligence, Zhang patted her on the head, praising her quick reaction. However, a thought about what had happened flashed through the red-haired fighter's mind, because he hoped that this time he would find out where the members of the Qingma sect were hiding. At the same time, two mercenaries were watching the boys from the roof, complaining about the unsuccessful attempt at reprisal. Kneeling in a show of loyalty, the purple-haired girl asks her master for permission to spy on Xiangyang, which he grants. Since their goal is quite dangerous, the ninja understands the risk of the entire operation and sets about carrying it out with firm intentions. As the night approaches, the red-haired gentleman returns to his home, reflecting on another fruitless day. Remembering the words of his female officer friend about how useless he was, the boy felt a twinge of grief from the weight of such a statement. Rubbing his collarbone, the young man walks tiredly into the room. Waiting for the right moment, the ninja hiding in the shadows launches her treacherous attack. Realizing that the fish has swallowed the bait, the guy calmly dodges its attack. Before the girl could come to her senses, the boy, who had masterfully dodged her attack, began to parry. In a masterful move, Xiang trapped the girl, holding her captive and demanding that she reveal information about who sent her. Even when she is at a disadvantage, the ninja manages to snap back at her opponent, to which he calmly reacts, advising her not to twitch. Moving on to harsh methods of extracting information, Xiang moved the girl onto the bed and, leaning on top of her, demanded that she tell him everything. At the most inopportune moment, Shinran's voice is heard calling for the red-haired hero. The unsuspecting girl entered the room and prepared to turn on the light, asking Xiangyang what he was doing.